Well, good morning, everyone. This is Lou Zacharilla from the Intelligent Community Forum, coming to you from New York City. New York City, of course, is right now the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak. Interestingly enough, today I was supposed to begin my top 7 site visit, in this case to the city of Hamilton, Canada. That's been canceled, as all of our top 7 city site visits are. We're going to make them virtual. Because these cities now are scrambling to respond to this issue and to make sure that public health becomes job one. So what we've taken it upon ourselves to do over the next couple of weeks is to have a dialogue with you and with people who are out there in our intelligent communities and elsewhere, working hard to make sure that these cities do stay safe, that they can respond. And we want them, as we've done at the ICF for over 20 years, to tell their stories to us and then to you, so that perhaps we can share some ideas and best practices. So I start at the top, in my view, where the City of Dublin, Ohio, is now wrestling with this. Dublin, of course, is a multi-time top 7 community. They are the home of our Institute for the Study of the Intelligent Community. And of course, they have a talented CIO who thinks much more globally about these issues, but today, of course, is working hard in his community to make sure that the outbreak doesn't get worse and that it is managed. So I'd like to welcome Doug McCollough to this first of the series. Doug, welcome from the City of Dublin, Ohio.
Thank you, Lou. It's great to see you, and thank you for mentioning what you said about New York. We are all watching New York very carefully, and you are setting the tone for the rest of us in many ways.
Well, thank you, and we need everybody's support as we've gotten in the past, and we'll definitely slug it out here, and we'll get through it. But you know, we've got the rest of the world's communities, and hopefully if we can teach anything, we will. But I wanted to ask you, as a first question, what's going on in Dublin now? What's the situation there? What are you guys experiencing, and how is the city responding?
Well, we have cases in Ohio. We have at least one case in Dublin, Ohio. And for those listening who are not aware, Dublin, Ohio is in central Ohio. It is on the northwest corner of Columbus, Ohio, the state's capital. So we're right in the middle of the state. And if I could make a note of encouragement, and I'll try to be encouraging throughout, we snapped into action, and not just Dublin, Ohio, but many Ohio communities really snapped into action. And I'm impressed with how quickly we grasped the situation and recognized much of what needed to be done. Not as quickly as any of us would have liked. I think we ramped up to the kind of stringent measures that we're under now. And the city initially had to deal with communication. How do you communicate with the populace to change behavior quickly? And that required us to have the tools and the mechanisms in place to do it. None of us had prepared really for a pandemic. Now, I say that advisedly, that we had prepared for crises and for community resilience, and we really tried to leave the door open for, we don't know what's going to happen, but if all goes bad, here's how we'll communicate, here's how we will organize ourselves. And we snapped into that plan pretty quickly. And so that's kind of where Dublin is. We're not in the kind of pain that we're seeing in New York City or parts of the state of Washington or some of those places, but we're expecting a wave, and we feel like we're prepared for it as best as we can.
Well, it's good to hear. Just for some background, you're a city of about 45,000, but you're tied to the the city of Columbus and the region. So there is a population area there. There's a big university not far from you called Ohio State. So again, this virus, as we know, does not respect borders. That's for sure. Doug, when you say it sounds like the first step was planning and then communicating to the public. Of course, you're led by a gentleman who is a 1-star general, so that probably helped in terms of the organizational aspect of it, Dana McDaniel. What was the communications effort? How did you, from the CIO's office, focus that? And the second question, are there elements in the plan that you're particularly proud of because they may be sort of new wrinkles in terms of responding?
The initial response was not a technology priority. It was a communications and public information priority. And the city rallied around those functions. Our first kind of interest is give people good information fast and kill rumors, kill bad information. Panic, misinformation, these things are really, really dangerous in situations like this and very harmful to forward progress. So one of our priorities, and it's not something that I necessarily have control over, but do we have the technology in place to measure community sentiment? And we do. We had recently deployed a system called Zen City, which actually allows you to monitor sentiment information on all sorts of different social media channels, whether you have a account with them or not with those social media channels, to see what impact messaging is having and to tune and refine your impact. And so we kind of went into a city to the public information analysis kind of a thing. And my role there is just sort of making sure the technology all works. Right. But the priority on day one is mitigating misinformation. And I don't know if we can all even remember 2 weeks back, 2.5, 3 weeks back, the really poor information that was pouring out. Yeah. This virus won't kill you. It's just like the regular flu.
Just hits old people. Yeah.
It just hits old people. And we were at 100 people. You remember? No more than 250 people, and then 100 people, and then 50 people, and then 10 people. So people were not adequately vigilant, and you have to get people vigilant without getting them scared. And that's a very delicate thing to do. And it was more important, and that gave us time really to reorganize and figure out our critical services and what we were going to do about internal staff as well. So we had to figure out our staffing plan while we were figuring out our public communication plan. Right. And, you got to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Well, especially in this case, walk, chew gum, and, try to take care of people. Doug, it's what I'm hearing is that the first thing you tried to do with that communications plan was to build a level of trust that you, in fact, were the group, the government that was dispensing the facts, the real facts, and not just opinions or things that would lead to panic. Have you had enough data come in now from the Zen platform that allows you to get a sort of a profile, or do you watch it in real time? How does that actually work in terms of looking at the infodemic, I should say?
Yeah, we have incredibly detailed information down to if a tweet gains traction and gets 45 retweets or something like that, we can monitor that in real time, and we can correct misinformation and those kinds of things. Just in going back to your concept of, is there a new wrinkle here? One unique aspect of the City of Dublin is we monitor what media are people using to get information about the City of Dublin and from the City of Dublin. And it turns out for us, our local news outlets are not the source of information that people are using. They're actually using our city website and our city social channels. And that's, by design, we have crafted them to build a lot of credibility, timely information going out, and trust. And we also monitor platforms such as Nextdoor. And if you don't know Nextdoor as a local community, I can tell you that's where everything is happening, at least in the United States. Information gets in there because it's a closed environment. It's not out on Facebook. And you might not see it for a long, long time before it's caught on fire and people are in full-on panic. So we monitor it and we make corrections along the way. And we've got really great data, and I'm not selling products or anything, but if you get a chance to take a look at Zen City, which we did not do as a result of a pandemic or a crisis, it placed us in the position of being able to monitor what's being said and the impact of our own messages in near real time.
Yeah. Would you then advise your other colleagues, some of whom you know, others who are watching from all around the world, to take a look at technology platforms like that first if they haven't to be able to set up a program?
I think what I would advise is to be able to do what that program does. And that program is going to make it easier. But ultimately, you need a social media program. You need a social media strategy that is prepared for resilience, for community crisis management. And you need a communications plan that goes beyond just your website. We love our website, but we are using a lot of video, for example. So I think we've got 3 videos during this crisis so far. One from the city manager, one from the chief of police. I believe we have one from the director of our volunteer services, because one of the things you learn in a crisis is volunteers arrive quickly. You just sort of get huge amounts of resources dropped on you. And if you don't have a distribution plan or that kind of a thing, you wind up with excess love coming towards you and no way to distribute it. Right. And so that director of volunteer services, and that's not her title now, it's been changed, but it's a critical kind of thing. And you have to coordinate your social media plan with, what do we need? What do we need you to stop sending, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, distributing the love adequately. That's a great phrase. And we're seeing in New York, too. The governor here called for volunteer health workers, retired doctors, nurses, people coming out of medical schools to do things. We got 40,000 people the other day responding, over 2,000 doctors, 2,000 nurses. And the question I think the city's probably asking is now, how do we deploy them? So right. it is an important element. Doug, I wanted to switch a little bit to an issue that people are talking about from the White House to the state houses, which is, we do have an economy here that is becoming as sick in many ways as the rest of society in real time. And so we're trying to scramble for what I call a middle way, looking at ways that the economy might function or might still function despite the hardships that are taking place because of COVID-19. Now, as I recall, a couple of years ago, and I did my site visit out there when you guys were in the top 7, you had a lot of SMEs that were at home. And I think a lot of them were actually in the healthcare industry, and you guys were mapping them. Is there anything, or are there any discussions that you guys are having about trying to find this middle way between obviously protecting the public health, job one, keeping then the economy, which is very good out there, going? Are those stay-at-home businesses being catered to? Is there some sort of support that's being given to them?
That's a great question. A couple of things. First of all, much of our flexibility and ability to influence the economy, it gets removed from our hands when the governor makes a declaration or a state of emergency that means that certain businesses are closed. We can't reopen those businesses without the governor reopening those businesses. So, when restaurants and bars close, that's a big part of a local economy, and that you're just going to take a hit there. I've been following this, I won't say argument, but this question about this middle way as well. And I think it's
a legitimate question. There's no political side to this. We have to have, health and economy, right?
Right, which is evidenced by you have the governor of New York on one side of a political aspect speaking about it in a reasonable tone, and you have the president of the United States speaking about it in a tone. And everyone's asking the same question. It's like, hey, we're heading for a real economic devastation here, right, that we need to begin planning for. And if there is some economic activity that could help jumpstart us after the disease is under control or better understood or wherever you want it to be, what do we do about that? How do we plan for that? Mm-hmm. So I will say we have been trying to monitor and understand our businesses that are being run out of people's homes or out of remotely, I'll say, because for many people it's in a coffee shop or something like that, but they don't have a traditional office. And these are very successful businesses and a great source of income for the City of Dublin. We can only assume that many of them are going to continue to be able to operate, but some of the businesses they are in are impacted. So if you work with a supply chain or if you work with retail, if you're a marketer with retail or something like that, you're impacted even though your business in particular is not. I will say that Dublin is blessed with a significant amount of health IT, health informatics, testing, therapeutics kinds of businesses, and many of them are full steam ahead, just really cranking. And with that being said, the Dublin fiber optic system does have customers. It has people who are on that system. Like many telecommunications folks, bandwidth caps on that system have been lifted for those customers.
Now, Dublin, just for the sake of those who may not know about it, that's your municipal fiber network. Correct?
It serves businesses. So we're not talking about home-based businesses here yet, but it serves businesses. And so we just getting bandwidth and making sure people have enough bandwidth to deal with this big global network change is one aspect of it. Beyond that, we are monitoring. One of the things that people immediately stop doing is responding to the city, checking in on them. We've all gotten 100 emails now from your carrier, from your cable company, from your area. Hey, we miss you. We want to make sure you're okay. This is what we can do for you. Are you okay? And we've all gotten those emails, and you begin ignoring them after a while because you're at battle stations.
Yes.
You've got to deal with food and water and illnesses and masks and temperature and all sorts of other things you're concerned about. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we don't necessarily know how those businesses are faring other than general information we have about the public. We know how many cases we have in Dublin. We have a good feel for how many people are sick, but we don't know who's working and who's not working. One other thing I want to mention in here that one of the stimulus packages or one of the helping packages, the bills that came out on this, helped the city because after about 20 days of someone no longer working within city limits, their payroll taxes go to wherever they've been working. And that was going to really devastate a lot of local governments who depend on those jobs that are in that community. So the crisis is going to last more than 20 days. So what do we do if someone's been working at home for 6 weeks? Do we lose that tax revenue? And the bill that came out relieved that so that if you are normally in this location, that's where your taxes would go to for now.
So that's going to be a big help. Just to go back on that bandwidth issue, I did hear you say you've lifted caps on bandwidth. Are you convinced that you are going to have adequate bandwidth? Because, as you say, this will last many, many weeks, at least the quarantine part of it, and when we come back, we'll come back slowly. Do you think you'll see more demands on bandwidth? And if so, where do you think they'll be coming from?
I do think we will. I am not today particularly concerned about that because we're not a carrier. So we have a carrier class network, but we don't have that many customers.
Okay. Well, how about looking citywide then, Doug? Do you see enough bandwidth? Because again, the global bandwidth issue is going to be critical, right? It's a life support system of a type.
Yeah, the city runs on the Dublin system, so we have a closed network to get to our internet provider. So as long as we can get out to the internet, so all of the city operations have the same bandwidth as they did before, even though people go home. Now, our VPN traffic has gone way up, but we're a known commodity. The City of Dublin has less than 500 full-time employees. And so there's not going to be more than 250 VPN connections, even if most people went home. So we know the numbers and we scaled up and we're ready for that bandwidth issue. I do think that the changes that are going to be happening, and we've seen it even, we have a daily call and it's on video within the city. All city managers dial into this call. We review our numbers, we look at our status, and we prepare for the next day. And we're all on video, and you can see the strain on the network. It's not necessarily on Dublin's network, but we're all in different parts of Central Ohio now, all using the network at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's putting a strain on the internet, I think.
Doug, the last question before I let you go back to work, and it's odd, right? We're telling people go back to work, and here they are sitting in their living rooms, and we've got our T-shirts on and so forth. So we are definitely in a new world, right? But right. You and I have been living in it for many, many years. Last question is I just want you to peek ahead a little bit, and again, as the months and years roll on, we'll be having a summit in Dublin. We'll be having our conferences. We'll be bringing all of our thought leaders together. What do you think is the one strategic insight you've sort of collected in your subconscious at this point that will allow us to say, this is not going to be a one-off. We're going to have more of these in our cities. This is where I think the city should be moving collectively to address the next health crisis or environmental crisis.
That's a great question. And not to really scare ourselves right now, but we need to be realistic. This is a pretty bad health crisis, but it certainly is not the last one.
Right.
And it's not the only thing that could come at us. We are still looking at terrorist attacks, cyber attacks, weather and environmental emergencies. And there's a lot of different things that could come at us one after the other. And communities need to be prepared for those kinds of things. One of my insights or observations during this time is that we had a lot of this technology and the ability to work from home, the ability to distribute ourselves, the ability to reorganize ourselves already. This wasn't new, but we didn't embrace it until we had to. And then there's a scramble. And as a digital person, as a chief information officer, my hope is that we will embrace things for not just because we're expecting crises, but because they are more efficient, potentially cheaper, and we need to get used to that kind of flexibility now before the next issue happens. And that would be one of my big hopes.
Yeah.
The other observation that I think I'm having is that we can beat this virus. But we are now coming to grips with the economic impact of it.
Right.
I think we can shut down an economy. We've proved that. You just push a button. You so order it. You say, shut that down, stop doing that. This is closed by my order. But restarting an economy, I don't know that we have those kinds of skills. I'm not sure our governors, our presidents, our mayors know how to quickly restart an economy. And so the economic development aspect that we've been paying a lot of attention to in Dublin, just in terms of attracting the right kinds of businesses, that's going to be some new thinking that I think we need to start to wrap our heads around now.
I agree, and that's a terrific insight. And I think, again, the online aspect of the economy should theoretically be one that you can get back into motion quickly, right? Because to a large extent, it is, it moves quickly. By definition, it moves fast. So, but you're right. The strategies are really not in place to reboot an economy. And I keep thinking about you saying that, and I think it is a terrific insight. Well, Doug, I'm going to let you go. We'll probably check back in with you. We're going to be talking to your city manager shortly on that. But, they say as Ohio goes, so goes the nation. So we're watching you guys. We're slugging it out for you here first. So we'll see if we can put a dent in the damn thing. But
hey, by the way, thanks for doing this, Lou. I think it's beneficial to us. I'm looking forward to hearing other community stories as well. So sharing information is exactly what we're supposed to be doing right now. So
exactly.
This series.
No, it's our pleasure, and it's what ICF was built for. But before I go, I have to hear one.
IO.
All right. Doug McCollough.
Getting better at that.
A little bit for a New York guy. CIO, City of Dublin. Thanks for spending time with us today, and good luck.
All right. Thank you. Be safe.